Want to take a moment just to thank you for coming. This is a tough thing to hear. I'll start just with an introduction. My name is Kevin Watt. My title is Vice President, Fraud Prevention and Collections here at First Dakota National Bank. I've been a banker for just short of 37 years. I'll be 37 years next Sunday, maybe Monday, something like that. I've worked at First Dakota for 17 years, and I've been in the fraud side of things for approximately 12. I need to go back and kind of research that. The reason I got into fraud is because as the collections manager at the bank, in the early days we were dealing with a lot of check fraud, okay? Customer would bring in a check, they'd drop it into the bank, they'd take the money out, about 3 days later that check comes back as fraudulent. And guess who got to call them and say, sorry, that check you dropped in here was fraudulent, and you owe us the money, because it's on the customer to know where their money comes from. So I got tired of doing that, and I injected myself into the fraud arena, because in those days we didn't have a fraud department. We do now. So I put together a loosely structured group of people called the Fraud Squad that were experts across various different areas of fraud within the bank. And over the years, we've gotten better and better, and the fraudsters get better and better. So we now have a fraud department that's dedicated to helping educate our customers and our staff about what's going on out there, how bad it is, steps you can take to protect yourself, to try to avoid becoming victimized by fraud. So, how bad is it? Let's take a quick look. This is a slide that the Federal Trade Commission put out. These are statistics from 2023. In 2023, there were 5.5 million total identity theft and fraud cases reported to the Federal Trade Commission. Losses were estimated at $10.346 billion. Now here's a tricky little thing about that slide. How many people do you think actually report their fraud to the Federal Trade Commission? Any idea what a percentage might be? If it's 20%, that number jumps to 50 million. If it's 10%, that number jumps to 100 million. I read an article the other day that the Federal Trade Commission figures about 5% report. So you're talking losses of $200 billion a year. Okay? That's a lot of money. That's big industry. Who's at risk? Everybody thinks, now there's a lot of people in my age category here, 60 plus, right? Everybody thinks we are the most vulnerable. Let's take a look. Again, the Federal Trade Commission. Here's 60 to 69. 18% of reports came from that category. But look, 30 to 39, 18%, and actually there were a few more people in that category. If you look at 20 to 29, 14%. 70 to 79, 13%. You think it's just our age categories that are vulnerable? No, every age category in the book is vulnerable to fraud, and that's why we want to do these things. But it's hard to get people to come out because they think they're immune and it can't happen to them. The reason it does happen to them is because they're not educated about what's out there. So there's various different types of fraud, and we're just going to cover these at a high level, and then, like I said, I'll swing back on some of these things, especially as it relates to questions that you might have for fraud. Imposter scams. This is somebody pretending to be somebody they're not. Could be your bank. We have that happen to us a lot, where you get a text and it looks like it comes from us. It's not. Happens to other banks too. Might be the FBI, might be the Federal Trade Commission, it might be PayPal, it might be Norton, it might be Microsoft. It's somebody pretending to be somebody they're not. Email compromises, they happen quite regularly. You have to be careful when you're doing business or communicating back and forth via email. Do I have any business customers in here? Oftentimes businesses that do business via email are a little bit vulnerable to that. So if you are doing business via email, be careful about sending anything private that the other party shouldn't have, but also be wary of changes, because we've seen a lot of cases where somebody gets injected into an email string back and forth and takes over. They pretend to be your business, and pretty soon, or they pretend to be your customer, and pretty soon they're changing wiring instructions and that kind of thing. You have to watch for subtle differences in the way they communicate versus what you're used to seeing. Customer service scams, there's a lot of those out there. If you get a text from PayPal, you get a text from Norton, If your computer screen freezes up and it claims that there's problems with your computer, call Microsoft. Don't. That's a customer service scam. Microsoft does not know what's going on with your computer. If it freezes up, it's called a malicious pop-up, okay? Sometimes if you turn the computer off and turn it back on, it'll clear it. Sometimes if you unplug it and plug it back in, it'll clear it. If you're using Microsoft, sometimes if you do the start, shut down, and reboot feature, that will clear it. If you can't clear it, you're gonna have to take it in and have an expert do it. But if you call the number on the screen, you're gonna get scammed. Romance and relationship scams, unfortunately, they happen more often than you think. You can also just call it social networking scams. I had a situation yesterday where a young man was approached by somebody wanting to purchase a picture he had put on Twitter. So that's more of a social networking side of things. He wasn't involved in a relationship. Sometimes it's romance type stuff. If you're in any kind of relationship with somebody via the internet and they start asking you for money, run, because it's a scam. And we'll talk a little bit about what the different types of scams are relationship-wise that we see, whether it's a male or female type of a situation. They're a little bit different. Grant and lottery scams. Those usually come from Facebook Messenger. You get a message from one of your friends. Well, it isn't your friend. They've been cloned, and your friend has won a lottery, or they've won a grant, and they want you to get a piece of that pie too. So suddenly they're sending you to an agent who's asking for fees and those kind of things. We see a lot of that. Lottery scams, you might get a letter from Publishers Clearinghouse, quote unquote, Publishers Clearinghouse saying, hey, you've won. There's a check attached for fees and charges that you need to pay. Publishers Clearinghouse doesn't work that way. One, they won't tell you they're coming. They just come to your house. Okay, so if you get a lottery and they're asking for money, it's a scam. Grandparent scams, how many of you gotten phone calls? Okay, this is a grandchild calling to say, hey, grandpa, grandma, I need some money. Went to Mexico over the weekend. I'm in jail. I need $2,000. Actually, it's more like 10 now because they asked for more and more over the years. That one is still fairly prevalent. I usually get more hands go up when I ask that. I've always marveled at that one over the years, at why anybody could fall for that. Till one day, it was probably 10, 12 years ago, my mom calls me on a Monday morning. My son's a high school junior. It's a school day. Mom calls and says, hey, have you seen Matthew this morning? Well, no. Is he home? Yeah, I think so. His car was down there. I didn't run into him because he was still in bed when I went to work. Are you sure he's there? Yeah, Mom, why are you asking? Well, he called me this morning. He said he went to Mexico over the weekend. He's in jail. He needs $2,000. And I said, Mom, he's 16. Do you think I would know if he went to Mexico over the weekend? I'd have had to buy his plane ticket and pick him up and take him to the airport. She goes, well, I'm glad I called. I was about ready to send the money. So I got a lesson in how easy it is, okay? It happens with grandchildren. It also happens with parent-child type deals. I had a situation where we had a customer or a couple come in. It was in one of our markets outside of Sioux Falls. They were worried about their daughter who was in the hospital because she'd been in an accident and the attorney needed $10,000. Okay, so I said, hey, have you talked to her? Well, yes. Are you sure? Well, I think so. Well, do you have her cell phone number? Do you mind if I try to call her? Let's confirm that she's in the hospital. So they gave me her cell phone, and I had them on speaker on my business phone. I said, I'm going to call her on my cell. I'm going to put her on speaker. And I had to pray that she picked up. Otherwise, I was going to be somewhat in trouble. So we called. She answers the phone. I said, hey, I got your parents here. They think you've been in an accident and that you're in the hospital and need money. Would you talk to them? Yes. So they went back and forth for about 30 seconds and confirmed she was not in the hospital. And they were happy that we called. So it happens a lot of different directions. And I will tell you, we'll talk about this towards the end, with artificial intelligence, this is going to be a lot scarier. So common fraud techniques, checks. What do you think the biggest form of fraud is right now, the fastest growing? Check fraud. How many of you write bills with checks? How do you mail them? You stick them out by your house, you pull the flag up on your box, you're telling the scammer there's a check in there. And don't think they won't come and steal your mail. Incoming or outgoing, okay? If you're writing bills by check and you put it in an insecure receptacle, you are taking the risk of having your check stolen. And once that happens, they're presented all over the place. They can be presented locally, or they can be presented around the country depending on where that check got stolen from. Okay, a number of years ago over our President's Day weekend, we had one of our neighborhoods in Sioux Falls get hit because the scammers figured people will be away for the weekend. Okay, so 3-day weekend, mail's coming in, might have checks in it. They were hitting mailboxes, stealing checks. By Tuesday morning, they were being presented around Sioux Falls in perfect sequence, and they looked exactly the same. Signature was just off. Okay, so mailing checks is not safe. If you do mail them, take them to the post office. Don't put them in the box, take them inside. There are master keys to the boxes. So you have to be really careful. And I hate to scare people like that, but if I put anything in the mail, it's going in the box, the mailbox itself, or the post office. So just be careful with that. That only gets you halfway there though, because when that check hits the other side, it's still at risk. And if your check is stolen, they got your name, your address, your bank account, your bank account, and the bank's routing number, you're going to have to close your account and open a new one because they have it all. Person to person, bank to bank, we're seeing more of that. That's where somehow or other the fraudster is able to get your user ID and password to digital banking. They have several tricks for that. We'll talk a little bit about that. But then they'll start using Zelle and PayPal and those kind of things to transfer your money out. Wires, we have an excellent wire department. They're very suspicious, and they will do callbacks. And we actually encourage our customers to do the same. If you're going to wire money out, once that money gets there, if you wired it to a fraudster, you're not going to get it back. So we are going to ask you some questions. If the wire department looks at your account, and again, we're not doing this to hassle you, but we've seen a lot of wire fraud over the last number of years. If you were asking you questions, it's because we're seeing signs of potential fraud based on the history that we've had over the last 10 years. Okay, so our wire department will contact us and say, hey, would you look at this wire? It looks odd. It's unusual for them. And we're not getting a good reason why they're wanting to wire the funds. So we'll do a little extra work. We've had some wire fraud. It's happened on the business side. It's happened on the personal side. On the business side, oftentimes it comes from these email hacks that I told you about. As a business customer, if you're going to wire funds, you always want to call back to your actual vendor to confirm those details. Because we're going to call you and do a callback to say, are you sure you're going to wire to this company, this account number, this kind of thing? But if you haven't done your due diligence on that end, you could still lose. So be careful with wires. Cryptocurrency. I'm not a big believer in crypto. We have some customers that try to invest in it, but for the most part, we see crypto used as fraud tools. Okay, there's crypto ATMs around the area. If you get scammed, and again, I'm gonna talk to you about how this happens, because you always think it can't happen to me, but it can. If you get scammed and they want you to take cash to protect it, they'll oftentimes say, take it to a cryptocurrency machine, you put the money in there, it'll protect it for a while. When we get through whatever situation they presented to you, you get the money back. You won't. Digital banking. Digital banking is really safe as long as you never divulge your digital banking credentials to anyone, and you never allow anyone on your computer. And if you do, you never log on to digital banking while they're on there. Okay? So digital banking is about as safe as it can be as long as you're as safe as you can be. Okay? Debit and credit cards, they somehow get compromised all the time. Nice thing about debit and credit cards is if you get fraud on it, you're not responsible for it, and I can turn the card off in a second. Credit card, if there's fraud on that, it's going to take 7 to 10 days to get a new one. But at First Dakota, I can shut you off in a second, and you can come into one of our branches and we'll print you a new card. It's safer than checks by a long ways. Fraud does happen, yes, but you're not responsible for it. The institution is, and like I said, we can cut it off right away. And then all they know is where you bank. Stolen identity, your identity is used in a lot of different ways. To open new accounts, we see some level of this. We've got, especially from an online source, people will apply online, fraudsters, they'll use someone else's ID. They're trying to open an account, and you wonder, why would they open up a DDA account? Okay, because that doesn't seem like that they can get anything out of that. But they use those as what we call funnel accounts, okay? So if they were able to get an account opened up using someone else's ID, they're using that account to bring stolen funds in and then to move them through other banks to try to get those funds laundered. So we call those funnel accounts because they're just moving stolen money around to make it look like it's good money. So that's the reason they do that. They file tax returns using your ID, so if you're an ID theft victim, and most of us are, file your taxes as quickly as you can. If you file your taxes and you get told by the IRS that you are a fraud victim or that somebody else has already filed it, you can get them filed, but it's going to take some hassle, especially at that time of the year when they're really busy. It'll take some additional time for you to get them filed and your returns coming back. Passport, insurance, or ID, they can use your ID for a lot of things. Again, we see stolen IDs to open those funnel accounts. Or every once in a while, we'll get an email from somebody claiming to be one of our customers saying, hey, we've got a new CFO. Here's his ID. We want you to add him as an authorized signer to our account. Seems innocent enough, right? Well, a lot of times it's a scammer who's figured out where that business or whoever banks. We'll see if we can get this thing added so that we can start stealing money from them. The one case I can remember, the ID was a kid that was 20 years old and he was going to be the CFO of a very large organization. It's like, don't think so. So we had to get a hold of him and tell him what's going on. And I actually did track down the kid and say, hey, have you lost your driver's license? And he goes, yeah, I have. I've had calls from law enforcement. I said, you might be getting another one, I don't know. Sale of information. Information is valuable on the dark web. Your Social Security alone is worth about $1, but your whole ID is worth way more than that. And the more full IDs these fraudsters get, the more money they can make. So they buy and sell information on the dark web. So if you become an ID theft victim, it's really kind of a lifetime commitment to trying to protect yourself. And then we've got some stuff over here that talks a little bit about that. So make sure you take some of that. But they buy and sell all kinds of things on the dark web related to IDs and tools of their trade. Synthetic IDs, that's kind of a confusing concept. Synthetic ID is really a combination of small bits of ID of different people. So it might be part of my social, part of your social, part of your social. Maybe they use your address, maybe they use your city, state, zip, or they just make up stuff. And they start opening accounts at various different banks that maybe don't catch the fact that the things don't match up, okay? And then they'll start applying for lines of credit. If you get a checking account open and you wait a few months and you apply for a line of credit, they may not check your credit because you're an account holder there. So then you're starting to develop a credit history, and the fraudsters are very patient on this synthetic ID stuff. They'll wait 7 to 10 years. And over that time, they're able to get more bank loans, more credit cards, more stuff open. At the point where they feel they've made enough money using that ID, they just take off. They'll leave the banks that gave them loans. They'll take the cash out of the banks that they had deposits in. They'll have maxed out credit cards and off they go. And you can't find them because it's a synthetic ID. Synthetic means it doesn't really belong to anybody. Common ID theft techniques, scams, social engineering, and phishing, kind of all the same thing. How many of you get phone calls virtually every day from unknown phone numbers? You answer them or ignore them. Okay. Now you can, using your phone, if you just want to be curious, I write the phone number down and then I just go into my browser and I type the number in, 319-307- whatever it is, hit go, and it'll usually come up with something. It'll tell me whether that's a good number or not, belongs to a foreign name, it belongs to a business. If it's nothing that makes sense to me, I just block the number and move on. We also get texts, PayPal charge, Norton security charge, all different types of charge. What happens when you get a text about a charge? What does your instinct tell you? Does it? Most people go, I don't want that charge. That's not mine. I didn't order that. So they call the number. Surprising number of people will do that. They won't notice, and I've got a few slides here that'll work you through looking for red flags on those things. But people's mostly instinct is, I don't want that charge, I'm calling the number. And they don't notice that it's not really a good number. So all of those types fall under I just call them all phishing. There's phishing, smishing, but they come via text, they come via email, they come via phone call. Data breaches and hacking, we're always hearing about data breaches that come from hacks. Hacking is just drilling into a system and getting information so that they can create a data breach where the data is then released. Public resources, there's a couple of places where they can get information on you. Now, if you did PPP loans, it's out there. Your stuff's out there. So scammers who are looking for ways to take advantage of PPP loans, and these are getting kind of dated, so we don't see too much of that anymore, that's there. But the other public resource they use is they go to the courthouse. They can look at deeds and mortgages recorded, because those are a public record. So if you've ever I get phone calls all the time or emails from employees who are customers come in and said, what is this? They get a card that says, in regards to your First Dakota mortgage, your home warranty is expiring. You need to call this number to renew it. And in the fine print down at the bottom that you can barely see, it says not affiliated with First Dakota. But in the top part of the card, First Dakota is in bold, and any other bank that they're trying to do that to. They're just trying to sell you a product, and they're using it's not illegal, but it's certainly not very ethical. So if you get one of those cards, just shred it. But public resources. The other thing, dumpster diving is a real thing. So if you throw away anything with personal information on it, it's legal for them to dig in your trash. When you take it out to the alley or take it out to the street, it's public. So anything you put in there can be dug out. So be careful about that. Theft. You see this mostly at workout facilities, unfortunately, in Sioux Falls. And unfortunately, it happens more to females because they don't want to take their purse inside. So what do? Leave it on the front seat of their car. And the thieves in Sioux Falls have figured it out. And I think maybe the workout facilities are doing a better job of saying, hey, don't leave anything in your car because it'll be stolen. But we've had several instances where boom, 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 5 cars in a row would be hit. They'd take purse, wallet, checkbook, whatever. And then within a few hours, they're hitting drive-ups of where the bank was, that a checkbook was stolen here, an ID was stolen here. So they write a check off of this account. They put this person's whose ID they took on the check, present the ID. They'll be at the furthest lane of a drive-up where you can't see them, and they'll try to cash the check. So don't leave anything in your car. Don't leave your checkbook, don't leave your wallet, don't leave your purse, even if it's out of view. Because they will try to open your car, and if it's unlocked and they see those things, off they go with it. And then you got some problems. Artificial intelligence, that's what we call AI. That's making our lives even more miserable. One of the reasons I don't answer the phone is because I'm becoming sort of a known entity in the fraud world. It'd be really easy if I picked up the phone and said 5 words. They have my voice. They have my voice. And they can make it perfectly sound like me. So you have to be I'm really careful about, I used to try to toy with them a little bit. I don't do that anymore. I just don't pick up the phone. But even if we put this video out and we're going to put it on social media, if my image was taken and used for 5 minutes, they could create me, okay? So you almost have to be careful how you post stuff too, because AI just makes our life that much more miserable. So what can you do? We're going to talk about preventing. To prevent fraud, educate yourself. You've taken a good first step by coming today. We're talking about a lot of stuff, and I will answer as many questions as you have and that you want to throw at me before we're done. But you can also Google. There are times that I say use Google, now there are times that I say don't use Google. You can Google common frauds and scams, and you'll have page after page after page of information about what's out there right now. So learn as much as you can about what's out there. Use trusted websites and contacts. This is where you don't want to use Google. You get a text from PayPal or you see something about a PayPal charge and you want to call PayPal, Don't Google PayPal. Go to paypal.com. Don't Google Microsoft. Go to microsoft.com. Don't Google any major company, because what the AI models can do is put fraudulent websites ahead of the actual website. One of the keys, though, is if you do that, if you are looking for a company, the fake ones will say ad on them, and it'll be a different address than the actual. I had an employee at one of our sessions in another market was trying to get tickets to a concert through Ticketmaster. She Googled Ticketmaster and ended up on I can't even remember what the second name was. So she bought fake tickets. Because she didn't go to Ticketmaster, she went to I can't even remember what it was called, but it wasn't. So be careful about Googling. Call a known phone number and website. Again, if you get a text that looks like it comes from First Dakota, sometimes they're not. The fraudsters know how that works. So it might have a number to call, or it might have a link on it. If you're not sure, call us. Just call the bank, because we can look to see if you had card fraud. And I'd much rather have you call me and say, hey, can you look to see if there was a charge for PayPal? Then you click on a link and have your card compromised and all that good fun stuff. So trusted websites and contacts. Don't necessarily Google them. Review accounts and statements. A lot of people don't do that at all. Treat your card like cash. Don't leave it laying around. Don't give it to anybody. That's your card. If you give your card to someone and say you can go charge $25 worth of gas and they go do a bunch of other stuff, that's not fraud. You gave them the card. That card is yours. Treat it like cash. Consider products and services. Digital banking. Now again, digital banking is a safe tool to use, and I know a lot of people get intimidated by that. But if you use digital banking correctly, it's the safest way to bank from my perspective, okay? I don't pay bills with checks. I use our digital banking platform. I use our bill pay, and most of my stuff goes electronic. There are some checks that go out, not very many. Most of the stuff is electronic. So I use digital banking heavily. You can look at your accounts multiple times a day with digital banking. So if you think something's going on, boom, you can take a look. Transaction alerts. That's a tool that you can use that says, hey, if there's any transaction exceeding, say, $100, I want an alert saying this transaction went through. You want to set it at a level where you're not getting alerted 3 or 4 times a day, but you can do that and kind of maintain some level of oversight of your account, if anything, because most fraudsters aren't looking for smaller amounts, they're looking for bigger amounts. Positive pay and ACH blocks filters. If you are a business customer and you're using checks, you need to talk to our cash management team about these 2 products, okay? There is some work involved and there's a little expense. But if you're using checks and one check is taken, they have you, okay? In order to get a check return that's fraudulent, you have to fill out an affidavit of check fraud. That's not very convenient, okay? If you have one, you're gonna have more than one generally, okay? So after about 2 or 3 affidavits, if we presented this product to you and you said no, you're gonna be saying yes, because it becomes a real hassle. It's best to have that protection in place now, because if you do have, Positive Pay is a tool that uses, we get the check number, we get the payee or who it's paid to the order of, and we get the amount. If one of those is not right, you get a report in the morning saying, hey, look at this item. If this is fraudulent, let us know. It goes back. You don't have to sign anything because you have the tool. ACH filter works the same way. If there's something unusual, I'm not an expert on ACH filters, don't get me wrong. But if there's fraud, you just say, hey, this is fraudulent, return it. You don't have to do anything more than that. There's a little upfront work, but I always encourage business customers, if you're using checks, use these tools, because sooner or later it's going to happen to you. Monitor and protect your credit. You can get your credit report once per year from a website called annualcreditreport.com. You can get one from each credit reporting agency one time a year free. Okay, so if you want to keep an eye on your credit, you can use one credit reporting agency today. 3 months from now, pull from another one. 3 months from then, pull from another one. And then 3 months later, you're starting all over again. I don't look at mine that often, but you have the right to do it. and you're just looking for stuff that doesn't fit you. Credit cards that aren't yours, inquiries that don't make sense. So keep an eye on it, monitor it, protect it. I keep a fraud alert on my credit report all the time. There's some information about that over here too. Fraud alert just says, I might be an ID theft victim, and I have been. Don't issue credit without calling me. So if a credit card company gets an application on me, they see that alert, they're required to call me and say, hey sir, did you apply? No. And then they pull that and know that an ID theft person did that to me. Protect your devices. Protect everything that you have with password, okay? Don't let your son talk you out of taking your passcode off your phone. Okay, we had a situation a couple of 3 or 4 years ago. Guy was going to Vegas. His kid says, hey dad, why is your phone locked down? You don't need that. They took it off. Man goes to Vegas, he's gaming, got a drink sitting over here. He's not paying attention to it. What do you suppose happened? Got drugged. He woke up 8 hours later, 3 miles from where he was actually staying. Now we thought he was pulling our leg when he said this, but we got video proof of it. So 2 young ladies spiked his drink while he was gaming and not paying attention. He wakes up because his phone wasn't locked down. He woke up without a phone, without a wallet, without a credit card, without an ID, but because his phone was not locked down, the young ladies that stole his card started hitting casinos and stores and spending money. Well, guess what? He got alerts on his phone saying, hey, are these charges valid or are they fraudulent? What do you think the girl said? They're valid. $12,000 later, yeah. Now they were caught. In his particular case, because it was fraud, First Dakota ate it. But he could have protected all of us by protecting his device. Change your passwords. Don't use the same password for everything. Be careful what you post on Facebook. If you play these games where it says, hey, let's play along, what's your favorite, and there's about 12 of them, when you answer those questions, you're giving fraudsters ideas of what your passcodes might be, because people use things they remember when they're making passwords. So be careful. Protect private information. Shred. Most banks have shred days. Take advantage of those because you do not want to put anything with private, personal information in the trash. So shred financial and personal documents. Keep them safe and secure as much as possible. Don't overshare on social media. We're just talking about that. There are some games out there. One of them is Name Test. Click on this to see what I don't even know what they are, but there's 2 or 3 of them going around. They may seem innocent enough, and some of them are real, but sometimes those things get cloned, and when you click on that, you're clicking on a game or you're clicking on some malicious thing that's going to pop up later and come back to haunt you. So be careful about playing games and don't overshare too much. UPS Informed Delivery. This is a good tool, okay? With UPS Informed Delivery, it's a service of the U.S. Postal Service. If you sign up for it, they will send you a picture of every piece of mail you're going to get that day. And if you don't have a secure mailbox, that's a good tool for you to use. Because if you're away from home and you know what's in your mailbox and it's not there when you get there, you'll be able to report that right away. And then if you are sending funds in the mail, follow up with your recipient to make sure they got it. Because again, if that check got stolen, they may not even be aware that you sent them a check. So it's just good practice to do that. I can't see that. So what can you do? Keep a level head. This is one of the hardest things to do because the fraudsters know psychology. And everybody thinks it can't happen to them. But if I had $10 for every person that says, I feel so stupid because I knew better, I'd be worth a lot of money. People don't expect it, but the fraudsters know psychology, okay? So if you have a special license for something and a fraudster is targeting you, you might get a call from the FBI. You might get a call from the Federal Trade Commission. You might get a call from the state's attorney general about your license and how it's being used for fraud. What do you think that's going to do to you psychologically? Where does your fear level go? Boom. Okay, it's up here. It can happen on anything that creates fear. If your computer freezes up and it's the Microsoft, we call it the Microsoft pop-up, if you call that number, they're going to try a couple of things with you. I got to keep an eye on the time here. We're doing okay. They're going to try a couple of things. One, they're going to want to get you into digital banking. So if you call the number, they're going to send you, they'll either give you some commands that they use in Microsoft, or they'll send you a tool called AnyDesk or something like that. It's a screen share tool. Don't ever do that. Don't ever share your screen with anybody ever, no matter what. Okay, then you'll never have this problem. But they're going to send you this, and they send my victims this, and they fall for it. Pretty soon, they're asking questions for an hour. They're just grilling the victims with questions. And the customer gets all turned around. They can't remember what they asked, what they said, what they gave away. All they know is their computer was down. This guy's on the computer. He's doing all these things. He's going to do one of two things. He's going to try to determine if you use digital banking. If you do, he's going to find a reason to give you a refund. So then he's going to want you to log into digital banking, and he'll say, we won't be able to see anything but a black screen. He's lying to you, he can see it all. So if you let him on your computer and then you log into digital banking, guess who controls your digital banking now? They do. Okay, and the ruse is, I call it a refund ruse. They'll give you a refund of, say, $400. We're going to give you a refund. They found accounts. Maybe you got 42,000 in one, maybe you got 4,200 in one, then you got your main checking account. We're going to send you a form, you fill it out, put 400 in there. They send you the form, you fill it out, you put 400 in there, and it changes to 4,000 or 42,000 or 40,000. And they say, look, and they'll point you to the digital banking screen. So you just refunded yourself $4,000 or $40,000, you owe us money. And they'll go through these gyrations to try to scare you into giving them money. Okay. The other thing they'll do, if you don't use digital banking, they'll just grilling you about where you bank, what kind of money do you have, and then all of a sudden, oh no, we're finding signs of child porn on your computer. Okay, if somebody says that to you, what do you do? What do you do? You panic, right? How'd that get there? I don't look at that stuff. Well, it's there. There's several signs of it. You're going to be in big trouble with whoever, FBI or whatever agency watches for that kind of thing. So you're scared. And they scare you into coming into the bank and pulling out cash, putting it into one of those crypto machines we talked about earlier, wiring the funds. They say you can't tell the bank, this is secret. They're going to ask you questions. Tell them it's to purchase a car or you're doing home improvements or something like that. Make up something. Because if you tell them, you're going to be in trouble. Well, they don't tell us. We have you fill out a form that asks you several questions. And one of them is, are you being threatened? Are you being told not to tell the bank? Do you want to talk to a fraud banker? These victims who are scared go no, 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 no to every question. They sign it, date it, and off they go with their cash. Next day they come in and say, I think I got scammed. And then I'm asking them questions and saying, you filled out this form. Why did you lie to us? We're just trying to help you because I was scared. When you have fear, it goes back to trying to keep a level head or trying to come down. Okay, so there's a couple of things. Stop, think. Does this make sense? Does it make sense? The other thing I use is I used to have this saying with my kids, because I'd say, hey, if you ever find yourself in a position of physical danger, 2 words, never panic, okay? Never panic doesn't mean you will survive every situation you're in, but increases the odds because your head is more level. And I say the same thing to people that are involved in situations of fraud. Don't panic. Think. Does this make sense? Step back. Breathe a little bit. Let your mind come back down from that adrenaline high, from the fear that scammer put in your mind. If you do that, you're going to reduce the risk that anything will happen to you. Consult. You get a call from your grandchild. You can't get a hold of the grandchild, call the parent, because why is the grandchild calling you anyway? Call the parent and say, hey, did this happen? No, it didn't. He didn't go to Mexico. So consult. Don't be afraid to call us either and say, hey, and we've had people call while the scammer was on the phone. I'm calling the bank. Don't do that. I'm calling them. And, they'll be talking to us. The scammer's listening because they can hear, but we can at least pull them back enough to say, hey, hang up the phone, come in here, bring your phone with you. If he or she calls, we'll talk to him for you. Okay, so keep a level head and consult. Don't be afraid to call us. My business card's over there. I want you to take one. Because if you get scammed, I want to know about it ASAP. And I want to know what happened. And I will ask you a lot of questions. I interview my victims very carefully, not to humiliate them, but I want to know what happened. I want to know what the situation was. I want to know, because I know most of the fraud schemes like the back of my hand, but the scammers do change their tactics. So if I ask you questions, that's what I'm getting at. Is there a change in tactics that I need to be aware of for the next victim? Review for red flags. So you're going to be looking for incorrect information, urgencies, vague references, misspellings, and grammar, and visuals. Now this is in reference to texts and those kinds of things, okay? Okay, here's a couple of, now these came to me. Okay, here's a couple of texts that I got. Okay, one is, we don't know what WFS is. The other one's McAfee Secure. It's an invoice for their service. Okay, so we're looking for incorrect information. We don't even know what WFS meant. This phone number, if this is a legitimate bank or whatever, a 986 phone number doesn't make a whole lot of sense. McAfee Secure, not sure if McAfee, if that's even their logo. And then this one down here, please feel free to reach us, our toll-free number @+1. You can't see this very well. Okay, now these are red flags. This says it's supposed to be 818. It's 8I8. Okay? So there are problems, incorrect information on both of these. And then urgencies. Okay? They always try to create an urgent situation because if it's urgent, they get that fear factor up and you're more likely to fall for it. So it says urgent. That's a red flag. Call us ASAP. Contact our cancellation department within 24 to 48 hours. If you don't move quickly, you're going to get that charge, right? So they're trying to create urgencies. Vague references, suspicious behavior, what does that mean? It doesn't even, it just says suspicious behavior has been observed on your debit card. Let's see here, what else is up there? I guess that's the only one that came up there. Misspellings and grammar, or just other things. Authenticate. To authenticate, that's just actually using language, grammar language that we don't use much. Okay, so if you're told to authenticate something, that doesn't make sense. Most firms in this country don't use this USD behind the dollar and cent thing. Okay, that's a red flag. And this is interesting too, I like it. McAfee Secure. McAfee is a virus scanning software, right? And in their thing, that you are finding our services enjoyable is our goal. Why would anybody enjoy McAfee? That doesn't make sense, okay? And then, please feel free to reach us. They didn't put the word "at" in there, they have a dot there, and again, the phone number is incorrect. Misspellings and grammar. Now, these are all red flags of fraud. Most people see these right away, but you'd be surprised the number of people that would fall for this just based on that 448.95. That's not my charge, I don't want it, I'm calling the number. And they don't notice the 8I8. Okay, and one more, just visuals overall. All right, where'd you go? Again, overall, this one doesn't make sense at all. Invoice, if you're going to get a text, it's usually not going to say that. A little bit about product details, you generally wouldn't need to know all that information. And then again, this is just a mess. These are all red flags of fraud. So when you get a text like that, if you stop and think, and you look at it carefully, a lot of times in the text, if you look at where it came from, you'll see a foreign name. So it might say it's from PayPal, but it came from Rodriguez at something gmail.com, okay? You need to watch for those kind of things. Now, I do have a tool. Write this down. If you have well, it doesn't matter what kind of phone you use. If you have a smartphone, there's a tool called Norton Genie, Norton Genie. It's an AI tool, okay? And if you know how to take a screenshot of something, if you get a text that's unusual looking to you, all you got to do is screenshot that text, Open up the Norton Genie. It's a free app. So if you have an Apple, you go to the App Store, whatever store you use to download apps. So you snap it, you open up the app, click on a button, and it says you want to upload a photo. Yes, so you click on upload photo. It takes you to your pictures. You touch it, drop it in there, and it scans it, analyzes it, and it'll come back and say, yeah, good thing you checked. That is a invoice scam. So it's a nice tool. I've tested it a lot. It generally works pretty well. Okay, so what can you do? Respond. You got to have a little fun, don't you? You want to, again, if you are victimized, secure devices, accounts, and credit reports. Act immediately. If you get victimized, call us. Say, I have a fraudulent situation. I need to talk to somebody who can help me. Okay, so get everything as secure as you can. If you allow somebody on your computer, we're going to tell you turn it off, don't turn it back on, don't use it again until you have that thing scanned and cleaned up. Phones, it's a little harder to plant things, but you can. So you just want to be careful. Secure your accounts. Again, you call us if you're a check fraud victim or they fished out your account information. We can restrict that account so nothing can clear. We can also drop your card into hot status, so if they got your card number, they can't use it. We can do that in a second. So you got to report it quickly, though. Start a recovery plan. There's one of the sheets over here talks about recovering from identity theft, and there's a website called identitytheft.gov. Contact creditors and financial institutions. Again, you want to do that right away. Again, we understand it can be embarrassing to report this kind of stuff because you feel like you just don't feel good about yourself when you fall for something. But I tell every one of my customers that said I feel so stupid, it's just like don't beat yourself up too bad, because these guys are good at what they do. They're experts. They're stealing $200 billion a year. They wouldn't be able to do that if they didn't know what they were doing. So don't beat yourself up. Get us called. Don't be too embarrassed. We're here to help. Some key takeaways. Fraud and ID theft do not discriminate. Remember slide number 2. Every age category is at risk. Be proactive. If something happens, respond. Call us. Think twice if you have any questions, suspicions, or issues. Use your gut. If your gut's screaming at you, listen to it because it's right. If you don't listen to it, you're going to be calling me and telling me my gut was screaming at me and I didn't listen to it. I should have. Follow your gut. If you have suspicions or issues, again, ask for help. Call the bank, call your kid, call somebody that you trust to help you through a situation like that. Explain what's going on. They might be able to walk you through it. Again, don't panic. Panic is the fraudster's best friend. If you're a victim, let us know immediately. Again, for debit and credit card fraud, there's a phone number on the back of your card. Don't be afraid to call that. Hey, I want to take a second to thank you for coming. If you're ever a victim of fraud, we'll help you get to the bottom of what's going on and give you the best advice we can to protect yourself going forward. So thank you very much. Appreciate the time.